Howdy everybody, it's Austin from the Super Robot Wars archives. Today we're gonna have a little bit different video kind of format going on. This is not gonna, I will say, this is not going to replace the standard upload content. This is gonna be additional. I didn't have the name figured out when I was making this video at first, but episode 2 you'll hear me talk about it. I'm going to be calling these videos nuts and bolts, so we're going to be looking at sort of more the mechanics of what's going on inside the game rather than like having a standard playthrough, which is why you're going to see me use speed up just an awful lot. I just need to get through sort of the nonsense content to get us into position where we need to be. And you're probably also going to see units that are like vastly overstated, so I have pretty much all these full upgrades. This is from my, I have a database of every scenario where every unit has maximum stats, just so I can like get through and test events that are happening on maps really easily. So that's what we're using. So you're going to see me jump around between a couple of different save states and scenarios throughout the course of this. Because again, like we're not here to like actually play the scenario, we're just trying to figure out some of the goings on. So this what we're trying to solve right now in particular is how support attacks work. When we were on the scenario in the playthrough that's up on the channel, I had the Dragon Gundam and the Gundam Maxter next to each other within the proximity of Rui Jangal's Skullrook, and I was not able to make a support attack despite all of the evidence suggesting that I should have been able to. They both had their support attacks available. It wasn't like one of them had spent them already. They weren't using a combination attack because it was just the two of them, and they don't have a combination attack together. And at the time, so this is also kind of a little awkward if you can't tell. I'm recording this in the past, or sorry, no, I'm watching a video of the past, recording this in the future. So I do kind of know the answer already. So I'm going to try and talk it out as we're doing this. But I will talk you through the logic that I used to try and get here. So at the time, what I thought was true about support attacks was you had to be on the same terrain type as them, so flying on land or in the water. And if you weren't, that wasn't going to yield a support attack. So it was odd to me then that we had two units that were flying, had support attacks available, were adjacent to each other, both of their attacks were in range, and they weren't yielding a support attack. So maybe there was an element of leadership that I had missed. Maybe that was something that I had not accounted for. Enemy units tend not to have leadership that much, and they tend also not to have that many support attacks. So A, we're not going to see it out of our units often, being in enemy leadership range, and B, we're not going to see enemies support attacks being canceled, because it's infrequent that they're going to be inside our leadership range to then have that be canceled. You know what I'm saying? I think. So I wasn't sure what was going on, so we're gonna have to like try and recreate the situation as best as I can. Unfortunately, I forget. I'm setting this up in a way that is not a perfect recreation of what is happening. This maybe gives away the answer a little bit. I don't think spoilers matter in this case, but if you're hoping for like some sort of narrative arc, it's not really quite the speed of these kind of videos. But I did not set this up perfectly in that I did not recreate the fact that we were over deep ocean, and that will end up being a confounding variable. Though I don't think this video captures it. I do, if I remember correctly, actually end up solving that in episode 2, but we're going to talk about it now too. It doesn't hurt to see it, to look at it 2 times, because it's very strange. So while I figured I would leave some of the setup in here so I could talk over that before we actually got to like the important elements of it. But we're quite very well near where we need to be. The Skullrook that has Prince Heinel in it also does have leadership, but I wanted to try and be as controlled with my variables as possible. He was not the one that was yielding the no support attack situation, so maybe it was like an unwritten quality of Rui Jangal. So, for instance, we're looking at the Nadeshko right now. Nowhere on the Nadeshko is it noted that it has the gravity wave antenna that restores the energy to the Ice Davaluses. You can see it when you highlight over. When you are using an Ice Davalis, you can see that area put around the Nadeshko for you, but nowhere on its stat screens does it tell you that information. So maybe this is just a property of some bosses that's not listed that I would have to like mark down and figure out each one individually. And when we were attacking Heinel in this scenario previously, the support attacks were working just fine. As I'm hoping we're gonna see right here. Yeah, see you can see there was a support attack there, quick flash up. That red arrow next to Chibity means that there was a support attack and that we're right next to him, so that means we're in leadership range. So that, at the very least, it's not a situation that Heinel is producing, but maybe instead of it being leadership, maybe it's unique to, what's his name, Rui Jungal, and it just happens to be the same range as his leadership by default. So we're gonna attempt some tests here. So we have both pilots that are flying and in leadership range, and a support attack is happening. So clearly that's not the problem. So maybe it is with the crossing of two borders. Maybe leadership represents a space that you either have to be inside or out of. So if we have one pilot in both, then maybe it doesn't work. But no, that's also not the case. In the catalyzing issue, this was exactly the setup. Outside the terrain, it was that one pilot was inside the leadership of the enemy, and one pilot was outside. So maybe it was like the problem was that they were like crossing or overlapping, that they need to either both be out or both be in. So now we're gonna do some old Austin doubting myself. I'm now testing how just regular leadership works, because we're now like editing more variable. Oh, not leadership, sorry, support attacks. We're now editing more variables, right? So the Dragon Gundam was on the ground, and the Maxter was in the air, which, based on my previous assessment, that wasn't a viable option. I believe that they both had to be on the same terrain, and that's not the case. And we just demonstrated it there, that both the Maxter and the Dragon were getting support attacks despite them being on the ground. So there's not like a really good answer as to what's going on here. I will tell you the secret is, if you can be on the terrain of the pilot that you were going to give a support attack to, you are allowed to make that support attack. But we're all going to jump to the next scenario now. I'll talk about that in a second, but let me finish that thought. But if you are over deep ocean, for whatever reason, you just can't make a support attack. The problem is the tile we were on. If you're over deep ocean, you just can't make support attacks. I think it's because no unit has the deep ocean quality to them. I think that's the reason why. But if I remember correctly, we're going to talk about this a little bit more in the upcoming nuts and bolts that'll be out in a couple of weeks. So here's our second element for today's nuts and bolts. This scenario also kind of confounded me when we were in the middle of our playthrough. My notes list that the Gratonius, that robot that you just saw fly to the left, the one that's positioned underneath the Mazinger units, we're going to see him a couple of times, so I'll go him out again later, that he has some behaviors that he was not demonstrating. So in my notes, I have it such that he blows himself up on the Fortress Demonica, which is this unit we're looking at right here, or he blows himself up on the Great Mazinger. So while I was talking about the previous episode, or the previous segment, what I was testing was whether or not how the Gratonius blows itself up on the Demonica. And my notes said it was turn-based, and I fast-forwarded to turn 3, and in fact, that was the case. So the Gratonius, irrespective to whatever else is going on the battlefield, is going to move over to the Fortress Demonica and then self-destruct. It doesn't do any damage, so there's not like an advantage of leaving the Gratonius with max HP to then get some free damage onto the Demonica. The unit just dies. You get nothing for it. You don't get any. I don't think he drops any parts, but you also don't get any funds for it. So that one is still consistent with what I had written down. But the problem is, when I destroyed it during the playthrough, I thought a cutscene played that instead of it actually dying, that it got taken like 10 HP or something, or it had 0 HP, and then there was a cutscene that played where it rushed to the Mazinger in the same way, and then self-destructed. But it just died regularly, and that seemed confounding. So my thoughts for testing were, maybe is it based on the unit? Does it produce a different result if the Great Mazinger and the Mazinger do something? If one of the other Mazinger pilots, I was thinking Getter, that's not right. If one of the other Mazinger pilots finishes the kill, or one of the non-Mazinger universe enemy, or one of the non-Mazinger pilots finishes the kill. So like, could there be 3 different results on where it's going to move then? Which is a little like heavy-handed, because I'm only missing 2. I only have 2 options I don't have like accurately recorded. I have the version where it destroys itself on the Great Mazinger, and then the version where it just dies like a regular enemy. So presenting 3 different possibilities seemed incorrect, but maybe, for all I know, there could be a third option that I hadn't recorded. What we were testing here was, frequently when a unit destroys itself on something, it keeps that unit from moving. So I wanted to see if letting the Gratonius blow itself up on the Fortress Demonica stopped the Fortress Demonica from moving. So I had to wait for turn, I think it's 5, for the Demonica to begin its normal movement. So test number 1, we're going to use the Great Mazinger because that is theoretically the unit in question that there's the problem about. So if the Great Mazinger destroys it, does that send it at the Great Mazinger? Nope, it just dies regularly. And then the scenario continues as planned. We'll reload that state in a second, and then we can test with one of the other units. So we're going to use... I guess when I was describing it before, I was listing the 2 Mazingers together, but it's probably more likely it would be the Great Mazinger by itself, and then the remaining Mazinger universe unit. So we'll test with the regular Mazinger, see if that does anything. Well, if it does anything different than just the unit dying. But a little short in HP, we'll let the Venus finish. I feel like in retrospect that's like slightly confounding to me because that feels like more of a Venus kill than a Mazinger kill, despite the fact that the Mazinger would get credit in every other way. But still, that is kind of testing for the Venus. So that also didn't produce anything other than just a regular enemy destruction. And now we can just chip with all of our non-Mazinger units. Yeah, we'll send the die turn over and see if it can finish it off, maybe. I did watch this back to try to remember what was happening, but I had to fiddle around with the rest of the team for a bit. Yeah, we're gonna test with the Venus again. Like I said, I think it was a little poorly organized of me to have the Mazinger not finish it off and let the Venus finish it on the support attack and have that count as the Mazinger's attack. But here we are. Now we can test with the die turn. This should one-shot it easily. And in every case, it's still just dying. It's still just dying normally. I did rely very heavily on the main character at the beginning of my playthroughs, so maybe the problem is the main character. Like, I feel like it's maybe a worthwhile question to set aside the MC and see if they have different functionality. I have Fiona here, she is my preferred MC, but there are scenario differences having Ral versus Fiona, even like really small ones. For instance, there's a scenario that's coming up later where you need to get the Nadeshko back from the hands of the enemy. It's a red unit for a little bit. And depending on whether or not you have Ral or Fiona, the unit that gets it back changes, and like who is forced to play changes. So like there could be small changes that maybe that makes a difference. So maybe it's the bro code between Tetsuya and Ral that allows it to happen, and like Fiona can't perform it or something. But I'm gonna try the same things a couple more times just to make sure. There are definitely some goofed up elements about this game. I think I've mentioned. I don't know if it's out by now. It's gonna be coming out around now, but I do mention that there is a scenario or two where I've duplicated the excellence before. You're not supposed to be able to. It's a bug. So there's definitely some bugged up things. So I don't think it hurts to check a time or two. But we're gonna test it a lot. I suppose I probably could cut this out, but it's good background footage so I can like finish my conversation. But there is still an element that is fully untested here, which is to say trying to end the scenario. So we're gonna look at preps quick because I need to get some parts onto a couple of units. What happens if you destroy... So we know that there is a hard deadline already on this clock, in that the Gratonius will die on turn 3. We have already tested that, we know that to be true. But it needs the Fortress Demonica for that cutscene to play. Like, the Great General of Darkness speaks during that cutscene. So what happens if the Fortress Demonica is not there? So that's what we're going to test. We need to put boosters onto people to like get over there in a hurry, or anything that increases movement. Because like I said, we don't have that many turns. So we're going to need to give our agile units some extra movement. And maybe that will produce a different result. It's also quite possible that we'll just end the scenario, but that's the only other thing that I can think of that actually might make a difference here. Yeah, sorry again, bro. You gotta go. We gotta arrow through the story really quickly. I say it every time, but I can you mod that? I don't know how moddable this game is. I like to try and make this job easier on myself. I tried to like click through the code a little bit and see if I could adjust some numbers to get me to scenarios that I wanted to, rather than having to like save a library of them. But I understand this code to be just a bit bafflingly strange. Like I have code editors, I have hex editors, and normally when you put it on a game and you save whatever address you were editing, when you reopen that game, that address is usable again. But when I've done that with Super Robot Wars, F specifically, that address is no longer recognized. It like changes the address every time you load it. I don't know if that's normal, and the other examples I had were the outliers, but it feels weird. So, but suffice to say, if anyone knows a mod to like skip the cutscenes from the GBA games, it would be a godsend. And maybe that's already implemented in some of the later ones. Because I'm playing D for the first time, I'm like kind of vaguely trying to pay attention to the story. So I'm not trying to skip those yet. I think I maybe paused here to go get myself a drink. I hope this is interesting. I would like to. I'm planning on making this sort of video for the channel in the future. I have 2 more of these made already for R. I mentioned it in one of the other ones too, but I'll say it again here, that if anyone has any like small minutia questions, that's like actually really what I care about the most. I'm making playthroughs just so we have like some evidence on the internet of like what a standard playthrough looks like. I have a thing I can point back to and reference and go, here, look at this as a baseline. But I'm much more here for the like nuance bit. So if anyone has a like really weird specific question, if you're like, this unit is working very strangely, or I've procced an event in a scenario that you don't have recorded here and I don't see it anywhere on the internet, please send those my way. I will happily make more of these. And that goes for any game that I have like noted as having played or played on the channel. So if you go, I have this question about Z3, like I can't do anything for you. I haven't played that yet. But as long as it's been on the channel, and this will be ongoing. So even if 2 years from now you're still watching me, you haven't moved on to something better, you can ask me about R. Like ask me about anything that's been on here. I'm happy to go back and pick at little small things. I also possibly will go back and make some updates myself too. I just need to decide that the documentation was done. Otherwise, I could mess with editing that forever. If you're a writer or an artist, like I'm sure you know, I'm sure you get it. This like feeling that it's never done, that you can keep editing, you can keep adjusting, and at some point you just have to decide that it's done. Otherwise, it's never going to get out there. So we're sending as many units as we can. I do want to try and move the Great Mazinger over in case the Fortress Demonica specifically needs to die to the Great Mazinger in order for the event to trigger, but that can be a secondary testing in the event that just its regular destruction doesn't produce the result that I wanted. I had much sloppier note-taking early on in this process, so it is possible that I just like wrote down the wrong name. I was like copying and pasting incorrectly. I definitely didn't think I was going to be making, I think, oh man, I don't know how many pages it is at this point. I think it's like probably close to like 300 or 400 pages. When I first set out, I figured it was going to be like maybe a small like 10-page document or something with just like weird small observations. If you've seen my other playthroughs, I'm sure you know what I'm doing. I love this spirit, and I think it doesn't get. I don't think it gets talked about enough, or it's not a tool that we address enough. I'm daunting down the Fortress Demonica because we also only have one shot at this. Well, we don't have just one attack, but we have just one turn to get this done, and the turn can do it. So we're getting different dialogue, and look, the Gratonius is moving. It does not have a Demonica to blow itself up on, and there we go. That is exactly the results I was expecting that I wrote down. So what happened was, when I was noting the Gratonius moves, I also just replaced the boss name with Gratonius for who the target was. So yeah, if you destroy the Fortress Demonica before the end of turn 3, it sets the Great Mazinger to 10 HP. So that's the end of what I've got here. I'll probably just pause the end screen, but Thank you all for watching. Like I said, this is not in place of the regular uploads. So I suspect this is going to get watched probably a little bit less often, just because it doesn't have the same like push of content. So I appreciate you being here. And like I said, if you have any questions about either what I just put on screen, if you're like, you said something and that's in fact actually not what's been shown on screen, or you have something you want me to check out, please let me know in the comments for this or any future bits. I'm happy to take a look. And I'll see you in, I don't know when I'm going to post this. It's probably going to be like a Sunday or Monday situation. So I'll see you, I think as of right now on a Tuesday, but that's like probably bad of me to date this. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you again for watching. Take care.